Title: The Greeting at the Edge. Year: 127,500,000. Era: Cradle of Titans. Author: Jeremy Levan and Rise of the Zodiac Series 2025. Chapter 1. The Flame-Bearer had once been a general, not by rank, but by reverence. She carried the eternal spark through wars no one remembers, lighting pyres that burned illusions from cities and ignited revolutions behind shadowed eyes. But when peace came, so did doubt. Her flame turned from beacon to burden, so she fled, far from thrones and chance. She wandered into obscurity, no name, no fire, just silence in the mountains. Until the call came. The Cradle District, once her stronghold, now faced collapse, bureaucracy, strangled innovation, and fear posed as prudence. They asked her to return. She almost said no, and met a child in the woods who asked, "What did you use to carry?" She answered, "A mistake I mistook for light." And that night, she dreamed of a fallen hero redeemed. Chapter 2. He had once stood beside her closest ally, and eventual enemy. They disagreed on one thing: timing. She lit fires early. He waited too long. When the dust settled, his delay cost lives and hers trust. They never spoke again, but now he waited for her in the capital circle, older, weathered, but holding a lantern. "I kept your flame," he said. "And I kept my silence," she replied. He gestured to the council chambers locked in endless debate. They feared change. They should, but we need it. "I know." She took the lantern and walked into the chamber. Chapter 3. A council arguing in polished tones, metrics, projections, delays. She placed the lantern at the center. "This is not a threat," she said. "It's a torch." "And what do you propose?" asked a woman with eyes like steel. "That you stop fear and collapse long enough to imagine flight." They laughed until the room dimmed, and the lantern flared, projecting images of mischances, suppressed voices, children born into waiting. She asked nothing, just let them watch, then said, "What you flee will find you eventually. How you greet, it is your becoming," and left. She did not stay for the boat. She walked through the city, meeting old wounds with new hands. The hero followed, saying little. Because redemption wasn't spoken, it was chosen. Together they began again. Not by command, but by spark. And those who watched, they chose too, one risk at a time. And the cradle finally grew. Title: The Spell in Every Breath. Year: 127,307,692.3. Era: Cradle of Titans. Author: Jeremy Levan and Rise of the Zodiac Series 2025. Chapter 1. The memory without a host drifted through the kingdom of Haldren like fog, formless, elusive, burdened with forgotten truths. There had once been a person, a leader, a rebel, or perhaps a traitor. No one remembered clearly, but the memory lingered, whispering in firelight, surfacing in the eyes of those on the verge of choice. Only the ash-lunged prophet could hear it clearly. He had breathed in the sacred cinders of the burning archive, the only survivor of a catastrophe meant to erase dissent. Since then, every breath he took came with visions, truths wrapped in ash, unbearable to most, but clear to him. He had lived alone until the memory found him and asked for help. Chapter 2. A new ruler had risen in Haldren, one who promised peace through strict order. Laws expanded. History shrank. Morality bid utility. The memory had once defied such systems and failed, but now they remembered the cost. The prophet, coughing blood and fire, listened. He knew what the memory wanted: to choose a new host, someone brave enough to carry it forward, someone who would not flee from moral pain, but live through it and act anyway. He prepared a ritual, not to bind the memory, to offer it a home. The night of the convergence, citizens gathered. No decree called them, only instinct. They watched as the prophet took center flame, ashes clinging to his skin like language, and spoke. Chapter 3. Your breath is a spell, he rasped. You've been casting reality all along. Then he inhaled deeply. The memory poured in. He screamed and smiled and pointed to the crowd. You, a child. You, a grandmother. You, a politician once silenced. One by one, he named them, and they came forward, not to carry the memory alone, but to share it, because moral courage wasn't about solitary burden. It was shared knowing, spoken truth, and the will to act through fear. The prophet collapsed, ash swirling upward like smoke returning to sky. The memory, no longer hostless, spread through Haldren like wildfire. But this time it did not destroy. It illuminated, and those who breathed it in became the spell and rewrote the world. Title: The Soulstone Spark. Year: 127,115,384.6. Era: Cradle of Titans. Author: Jeremy Levan and Rise of the Zodiac Series 2025. Chapter 1. The Shield. Maiden had never forged anything but silence. Raised in a guild of stoic sentinels, she was taught that protection meant suppression of emotion, of expression, of all that was soft. Her armor gleamed, Her drills were flawless, and her words few, but she kept a secret sketchbook beneath her cot, filled with weapons no one had ever seen, armor with wings, and cities that breathed. She never showed it to anyone, until the watcher from the morrow arrived. He came not through gates, but through dreams, a traveler from a future that no longer existed, born of timelines twisted and erased. He saw one thing someone could imagine beyond the bounds of order. Someone like her. Chapter 2. He found her after drills, sketching beside a stream. He said nothing, only watched. When she noticed, she prepared to flee. He held out a shard of soulstone, translucent and humming. "This," he said, "is forged from surrender." She frowned. "I don't surrender. Not to enemies," he said. The wonder. That night, she touched the shard, and dreamed of her sketches made real, floating fortresses. Armor that healed wounds instead of causing them. Shields that bent sunlight into bridges. The next day, she failed her drill on purpose. The instructors gasped. She smiled. Chapter 3. They cast her out, called her a deviant. The watcher caught her before she fell too far. Together they traveled to the wastes of what could have been. There, creativity lived wild and unchecked. She forged her first real invention. A memory catcher woven from discarded vows. They used it to recover fragments of what the world had lost when imagination was sacrificed for control. Villages reopened their workshops. Children began inventing songs that taught equations. And the shield, made now smith of impossible things, forged a new title, Sparkeeper. She taught others what she'd learned, that the iron will hidden in soulstone begins with surrender, not to weakness, but to what you cannot hold, and in that surrender, innovation, imagination, and the future. Title, The Stillness Between Seconds. Year, 126,923,076.9. Era, Cradle of Titans. Author, Jeremy Levan. Rise of the Zodiac Series 2025. Chapter 1. The chronomender did not fix clocks. She healed moments. In the city of Marnies, where time had fractured after the cataclysm of wills, entire neighborhoods looped through snippets of regret, rage, and unspoken wishes. People repeated mistakes not because they forgot, but because time refused to move forward. The chronomender wandered this time. Locked pockets, coaxing seconds back into flow with a whisper, a memory, or a well-timed tear. Her only companion was a map that changed with her empathy, and one name scratched in salt beneath her sleeve. The name buried in salt. She had once failed them, and now she walked forward to heal what she had broken slowly, with patience. Chapter 2. She entered Sector 9, a loop locked into 3. In it riot, shouts, flames, accusations. No one listened. No one remembered what had started it. In the center stood a young man, frozen mid-scream, holding a stone. She touched his shoulder and waited. 10 loops. 20. 30. Finally, he turned and wept. "You're not wrong," she said. You're unheard. The loop softened. Time trickled. Others noticed. Some stopped fighting. Some kept yelling. She said nothing, just waited. Touched one, then another. Each a ripple. Each a risk. Because to feel deeply is to risk becoming fully alive, and most preferred armor. But a few toes breath. Chapter 3. The name buried in salt found her before the loop ended. A woman she once ignored, dismissed, left in bureaucratic limbo while time broke. Now she stood whole. "Why return?" she asked. "Because patience was my only key. And now I'm here to listen." The woman nodded, then helped them learn. And so they stayed, not to force change, to model it. The rite ended not with laws, but silence. One where healing began. The chronomender's map stilled, then vanished, because time no longer needed mending. It needed meaning. And Marnies learned that patience was not passivity. It was strategy, sacrifice, and slow revolution. 1 second at a time. Tidal. The dance with the inevitable. Year, 126,703,769.2. Year, Cradle of Titans. Author, Jeremy Levan. And Rise of the Zodiac Series 2025. Chapter 1. The Ashwalker had seen the end before, not in vision or prophecy, but in ruins. She traveled through what remained of the knowledge cities, sifting through embers and encrypted dust. Her boots crushed broken data tablets and melted textbooks. The world had once been brilliant. Now it was quiet, and she walked it, collecting fragments of what had been forgotten. Her companion, the keeper of cosmic law, was a sentient archivist embedded in the last crystalline ledger, an artificial mind that remembered too much and forgave nothing. Their mission was restoration, but not of buildings, of knowing, because ignorance had ended the world once. They would not be allowed to do so again. Chapter 2. They came upon the city of Stillite, where learning had been outlawed in favor of dictated stability. Citizens wore neural dampers to suppress curiosity. Questions were a crime. Answers were heresy. The Ashwalker entered as a vendor of ash relief balm, the keeper hidden in her wrist, whispered laws long buried beneath soot. Together, they began teaching one child at a time, through rhythm, through riddles, through story. The children started to remember. The elders began to dream. The guards began to question. And the council, they panicked, issued a decree. Burn all unauthorized data. The ashwalker knelt in the ashes, whispered, "Inevitable doesn't mean cruel, it means unavoidable. Learn to dance with it." And then she danced. Chapter 3. Knowledge surged, in the streets, in the minds, in the very bones of the people. They no longer wanted simplicity. They craved understanding. The dampeners cracked. The libraries returned, not as shrines, as playgrounds. The keeper of cosmic law, once redid, learned to laugh, reprogrammed by joy, rewritten by wonder. The ashwalker moved on, as she always did, but in stillite. They were named the square in her honor, not with her name, with her words. The seek is sacred, the question holy. To know, a gift we give to the world, because knowledge, pursued with purpose, does not destroy, it dances, and we all rise in its rhythm. Titled, The Silence That Shaped the Stars. Year, 126,538,461.5. Era, Cradle of Titans. Author, Jeremy Levan, and Rise of the Zodiac Series, 2025. Chapter 1. The Keeper of Ashes lived on the edge of the forgotten sector, where time bled and stars hesitated. Her sanctuary was a vault of fire. Blackened memory stories burned before they were ever told, their truths sealed in urns too sacred to scatter. She was a historian of what could not be spoken, and in her care, the forest that remembers. It was not a forest of trees, but of memory, constructs rooted in neural lattices, growing silently in a dome of artificial mist. It absorbed forgotten thoughts, spanned dreams, classified anomalies, everything society feared too much to understand. And it had started whispering again. The whispers formed the question, "Why do you not ask?" Chapter 2. The Confederation sent scouts, then censors, then a delegation of clarity officers, each one left more confused than the last, trapped in mental loops or overcome with emotion they couldn't explain. The keeper warned them, not all stories are meant for it every year. Some are sacred in their silence. But they pushed, demanded access. She turned to the forest, listened. The forest showed her a path when only she could walk. At the heart, she found it, a seedling of forgotten ambition, a memory once sealed by the first generation of terror shapers. It pulsed with potential and fear. She inhaled and remembered the first question humanity had refused to ask. What if we were wrong? Chapter 3. She emerged changed, not glowing, not divine, just certain. The Confederation returned. She offered them one story. A single urn, inside silence. A silence that bent time. When they opened it, they heard not words but possibility. Some ran, some knelt, some wept, and one asked, "What now?" She smiled. "Now we stop fearing the unknown and start shaping it." The forest expanded that year, not with technology, with trust. A new archive formed, one that welcomed unknowns, honored silence, and measured progress not by control, but by curiosity. The Keeper of Ashes placed her own name in the fire, and vanished. But her echo lived on in every whisper. Fear delays, wonder builds, and not all stories must be shouted. Some bloom in stillness. Title, The Oracle and the Darkness. Year, 126,346,153.8. Era, Cradle of Titans. Author, Jeremy Levan, and Rise of the Zodiac Series, 2025. Chapter 1. The Oracle of Shifting Sands lived in the heart of a labyrinth that changed with the tides of thought. No map could lead to her, only persistence. Pilgrims came to ask her truths, but most never made it past the first corridor. The sands whispered doubts, replayed failures, crafted illusions of dead ends. Only the determined could press forward, those who believed their question mattered more than their fear. One day, a stranger arrived, cloaked in dusk. Speaking only in riddles, they claimed to carry the plague of the possible. It wasn't a disease of body. It was of imagination. Every step they took made the world tremble with what might be. Alternate paths fractured behind them. Futures collided, and they were dying. Chapter 2. The Oracle saw it immediately. Timelines unraveling behind the stranger like loose threads in a worn tapestry. They had seen too many outcomes, tried too many doors, failed too many times. But they still came. Why? She asked. Because one ending must work, they said. She offered no cure, only a challenge. Walk the maze again, from the beginning. But this time, trust only your silence. The stranger obeyed. They walked not with force, but surrender. Where walls had once blocked them, they found whispers of new doors. Where shadows once disoriented, they now lit paths with memory. And at the center, beneath a sky made of sand, they found a single phrase carved in glass. Stars owe their shine to the darkness they were born from. Chapter 3. The stranger fell to their knees, not in despair, in understanding. Persistence wasn't brute force, it was reverence for the unseen. A willingness to try again, not because of pride, but purpose. The plague of the possible stilled, became potential instead of poison. The stranger returned to the outer world, changed, no longer a hazard of fractured futures, but a beacon for the ones still wandering. They rebuilt cities with doorways shaped like questions. They taught children how to fail with joy. And the oracle, she remained, watching the maze grow, not simpler, but kinder, because persistence was not the opposite of mystery. It was its path, and every path was a star in hiding, waiting for someone to shine. Title: The Light You Guard. You're a Cradle of Titans. Author: Jeremy Levan and Rise of the Zodiac, Series 2025. Chapter 1. The Shadow Twin was born under an eclipse, one of 2 children. Only she survived. Or so the story went. She lived in the cliff-side stronghold of Kirvire, a bastion built on perfection and precision, where gratitude was considered a weakness and every resource measured to the last grain. She rose quickly, becoming keeper of the ledger, guardian of the stronghold's wealth, secrets, and boundaries. But she kept one secret to herself, a journal, hidden beneath the floorboards. It recorded names of those she'd never thanked. The baker who fed her as a child, the nurse who soothed her fever, her twin, never held but always present in dreams. What you guard the most may be what you believe could vanish. And then came the light there. Chapter 2. He arrived as a historian, seeking access to Kirvire's records. He smiled too easily, asked too many questions, noticed too much. When he requested the Shadow Twins' company for an audit of forgotten accounts, she resisted. But curiosity is a slow crack, and he was kind, genuinely, not strategically. Over time, she watched him leave small notes of thanks to a stable boy, to the woman who dusted the stairs, even to her after she corrected his figures. "You're odd," she told him. "Gratitude makes people odd in a world that forgets it," he replied. Then he found her journal. Chapter 3. He didn't read it. He returned it with a bow and a note. "Let what you guard become what you share." She wept quietly, then began her own notes. The staff, the citizens. To herself, the shift began slowly. People smiled more. Assumptions softened. Policies allowed for pauses, kindness, breath. One day, she stood on the high parapet and read a letter aloud. "To the one I never met, but never forgot, thank you for being the other half of the silence that shaped me." That night, the stronghold lit candles not for mourning but for thanks. And Kirvire began to shine, because gratitude wasn't weakness. It was preservation and peace. And the Shadow Twin, she was no longer guarding absence. She was sharing light with the world and with herself. Title: The Heart That Holds the Dawn. Year: 125,961,538.5. Era: Cradle of Titans. Author: Jeremy Levan and Rise of the Zodiac, Series 2025. Chapter 1. The Spirit Midwife had delivered revolution in silence. No banners, no speeches, only whispered guidance at turning points where people broke and chose to mend instead. Her work was subtle, invisible, essential. In the fractured city of Tamriel, where the streets belonged to feuding syndicates and the skies were owned by lawmakers who hadn't walked ground in decades, she found her next call. A child had gone missing, not taken vanished. All signs pointed to the keeper of the last dawn. The figure both feared and forgotten, known for orchestrating ceasefires. No one asked for and ending feuds through silence and bodies. She didn't seek justice. She saw alignment. The midwife walked the alleyways not for clues, but for confessions. Chapter 2. The gangs refused to unite. Each had their language, their wounds, their clocks. Some worshipped speed, others silence. Still others fate. They agreed only on who they hated. The child, it turned out, had walked into the keeper's territory voluntarily, to escape, to listen, and to remind the keeper what dawn looked like. The spirit midwife followed the trail, found the keeper beneath the old courthouse, tending a garden of glowing fungi shaped like stars. They came to ask, the keeper said, to ask what peace costs. "And what did you tell them?" The midwife asked. "That it costs everything we hoard and nothing we truly need." Chapter 3. The gangs prepared for war. The midwife called them meeting neutral ground. Broken building. No weapons. She brought no speech. Only the child. The child spoke. "My heart held every flag you fly, and it broke. Then I gave it to her," they said. Pointing to the midwife, she gave it to the keeper, and the keeper gave it back whole. Silence followed. Then the syndicate of wire removed their colors. Then the cloud knives burned their contracts. Then the stone judges laid down their final verdict. Let's build. Together, they constructed the hall of Dada Courthouse, garden and temple in one. No sides, only seats. because the wars that shape the world are often waged inside a single heart, and when that heart surrenders, peace has a chance, even in crime-stained cities, even in us. Title: The Moon Woven Through Wounds. Year: 125,769,230.8. Era: Cradle of Titans. Author: Jeremy Levan and Rise of the Zodiac Series 2025. Chapter 1. They called her the Weaver of Moons, though she never touched the sky. In the twilight-bound realm of An, Oral, where tides obeyed ancient song and silver threads marked the fates of mortals, she spun not cloth, but choicest, each woven strand binding one life to another in unseen symmetry. Her loom sang softly beneath her fingertips, its notes echoing across kingdoms. But her weavings had begun to fray. Storms no longer obeyed the tides. Empires crumbled without warning. The threads she trusted were now snarled with lies. And in the shadowed distance, the mirror serpent stirred. Once her creation, now her undoing, born from the reflection of her own grief. Chapter 2. The mirror serpent had been forged from a single act of truth, uttered too late. A love unspoken, a warning withheld, a betrayal uncorrected. It lived in the caverns beneath the looming vault, whispering twisted truths that undid those who listened. The weaver descended to meet it, not to slay it, to understand it. "Why do you unravel what I've built?" she asked. "Because it was never whole," the serpent replied. "You wove without bleeding." She faltered, then bled. One drop for every life she stitched too tightly. One memory for every truth she feared to tell, and with each drop, the world trembled. Chapter 3. The lands cracked open not in destruction, but in revelation. From those cracks rose the forgotten. Dreamers exiled for imperfection, warriors shamed for tears, children hushed before they asked dangerous questions. The weaver stepped into the daylight carrying a new loom, its threads not spun from perfection, but resilience. Each thread imperfect, stronger for it. Those who wield truth must know how to bleed. So she taught others to weave, to mend what they once ignored. It tells stories that held pain as gently as promise. And the mirror serpent, it watched and wept, not in defeat, in release. For it had only ever wanted to be seen, and now it was, because resilience is not survival. It is choosing to rise, threadbare, truth torn, moon bound, and whole. Title: The Weight of Unfolded. Year: 125,576,923.1. Era: Cradle of Titans. Author: Jeremy Levan and Rise of the Zodiac Series 2025. Chapter 1. The once winged was the smuggler of memories. Not drugs, not weapons, memories. Extracted from minds under sentence. Sealed in crystal, and passed between rebels who wanted to remember what the world tried to forget. Her wings had been burned during the reclamation sweep, a punishment for flying ideas past borders. Now she ran on rooftops and shadows. But memory was heavy, and she was getting slower. The root tangler found her collapsed beneath an ironwood bridge, surrounded by a fractured memory. Glass that hummed with regret. "Still hoarding pain?" he asked. "I don't trust change," she growled. "You mistake surrender for loss." He offered her a root. It pulsed with living light. Chapter 2. Together, they infiltrated the city of filtered sky, where the government had outlawed the storage of unapproved emotional states. It was a clean city, efficient, sterile. The root tangler didn't believe in violence. He believed in chaos through growth. They planted memory. Roots in alleyways, let vines of forgotten feelings erupt through cracks in the marble of authority. The city panicked. Surveillance bots glitched when exposed to grief. Order unraveled in sobs and song. The once winged moved through it all, scattering her memories like seeds. Each one a truth, each one a tear. And with every memory she gave away, she felt lighter. The more you release, the more room you make for the sacred. Chapter 3. Authorities hunted them. They quartered her in the center square of links long gone. Body exhausted, she raised her hands. Then the crowd began to speak not in shouts, but in fragments of their own memories returned. A mother's lullaby, a brother's laugh, a dream of what could have been. They stood between her and her captors. And the city bent, not in rebellion, in recognition. The laws broke, reformed, new ones written in public. By hand, the root tangler left without farewell, roots trailing in his footsteps. The once wind stayed, opened a garden of release. No price. No passwords, only truth, and those who entered left lighter, because personal growth is not found in holding more, but in finally letting go, and what grows in that space. Sacred. Title: The Motion Without a Rival. Here. 125,384,615.4. Era: Cradle of Titans. Author: Jeremy Levan and Rise of the Zodiac Series 2025. Chapter 1. The Dreamwalker slipped through minds like moonlight through shutters. In the broken city of the Lorraine's reach, where crime had become commerce and justice a myth wrapped in caution tape. She was a whisperer, a ghost in legal archives and criminal hideouts. She entered dreams not to steal, but to learn. She didn't seek secrets. She sought regret. She found plenty. In one dream, she saw a boy gripping a stolen apple with shaking hands. In another, a politician rewriting memory to silence guilt. And beneath it all, a presence lingered, the wounded saint, a name etched in red across every criminal ledger. A figure whose acts of mercy had left trails of bodies. She followed his trail into waking. Chapter 2. The wounded saint did not hide. He fed the poor with funds siphoned from extortion rings. He stitched wounds in alleyways with hands that had once broken bones. He said nothing of the past, but carried it in his limp, in the tremor of his left hand. When the dreamwalker found him, he did not flee. "I've dreamed of you," he said. "I know," she replied. "Why are you here?" "Ask what you will." He looked at the children watching from behind crates, the old woman smiling through broken teeth, the gang leader who brought food but not guns. "I owe them my freedom," he said. "You think that's justice?" "No," he said. "It's responsibility." Chapter 3. The city's elite demanded his arrest. The dreamwalker was offered reward, immunity, status. Instead, she shared his dreams publicly. Not his crimes, his choices, his guilt, his acts of redemption, and how freedom without responsibility was just motion without arrival. "Chasing wind," she said in court, "teaches you motion, but not arrival." The jury wept. The verdict, unorthodox. He would not be imprisoned. He would serve openly, under watch, not as punishment, but as proof. He remained the wounded saint, not perfect, present. The dreamwalker faded into rumor. But every child taught to read by candlelight knew her name, because true freedom was an escape. It was arrival, with others, together, tidal, where the ash laughs. Year 125,192,307.7. Era, Cradle of Titans. Author, Jeremy Levan, and Rise of the Zodiac Series 2025. Chapter 1. The stranger at the threshold never crossed the same doorway twice. He wandered from settlement to settlement, helping with problems too tangled for formulas, too fragile for fists. He gave no name, asked no payment, and always left before dawn. In the Ironwood town of Crane's Hollow, he met the laughing Ash. She was the village scribe, known more for her sarcasm than her scrolls, and she didn't believe in strangers, especially not ones who promised help without ego. "Collaboration?" she scoffed. "Is that code for stealing credit?" He smiled. "Only if you're the kind who keeps score." They argued for 3 days straight. Then they built a water channel together that fixed a 5-year drought. Chapter 2. Word spread. Requests came in from nearby towns. They answered together, one with ideas, the other with fire. She showed him how to listen before he acted. He showed her how to act before fear took root. And somewhere between blueprints and burn marks, something grew. Not just romance. Respect. The work was hard. People tried to divide them. "Let him lead." They told her. "She's slowing you down." They whispered to him. They didn't listen. They asked each other instead. Until one day, during the construction of a bridge between rival towns, someone sabotaged the site. It collapsed. She was trapped beneath the rubble. He froze. Chapter 3. She laughed even as the dust choked her. "Go on," she coughed. "Save the day like a legend." "I need you," he said. "And prove it. Don't do it alone." He rallied the town's both sides, gave no orders, just reminded them what she had taught, that certainty breaks like glass beneath the feet of the wise. They worked together, and saved her. The bridge was rebuilt not by one town, but two, and its name was carved in ash and stone. Together. The stranger stayed that night. First time he ever did. And the laughing Ash. She stopped mocking doorways. Because sometimes you don't have to cross them alone. Sometimes you build them together.